Hello, friends. It's the top of the hour. Welcome to the week of August the 12th, and welcome back to our latest session of Coaching to Confidence, our weekly conversation about real estate and your success. I'm Chris McGatt. If we haven't met yet, I'm the other Chris, and I head up the coaching division right here at Leaders Edge Training. Oh boy, we have got a great show for you today. And of course, we've got the Q&A coming up right at the bottom of the hour. Speaking of that Q&A, now is a perfect time to go ahead and drop a question or even a comment into the Zoom little Q&A section right there at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be sure to cover it during the second half of today's session. Every week, we stream live to make sure that we're bringing you topics that are both timely and relevant. As you know, each week we cover one of four different areas. It's either going to be on lead generation, helping you build your client base, sales skills to close more deals, inspiration to stay motivated and inspired, or your business structure. Because, folks, we have all got to figure out better ways of working more efficiently and more effectively in order to reach our goals consistently. So let's get on to today's topic. Listen, with the dramatic reduction in mortgage interest rates and in expanding inventory, now is the perfect time to re-engage those old, stale leads. Chris is going to provide you with a step-by-step strategy to reconnect, overcome objections, manage expectations, and get under contract with these folks that may have gone dark. Hey, listen, have you ever had a prospect ghost you? Well, of course you have. It goes with the territory of sales. We'll be exploring why leads go dormant, ways to help prevent it, and how to reignite those cold leads. Today's session is all about generating business right now. We've got something new, by the way. Take the opportunity right now to scan the QR code we're going to pop on the screen right now. And this QR code will give you the opportunity to download highlights of today's session. We've had a number of you say, hey, listen, Chris goes so fast. There's so much great content. I want to be able to have something to refer back to in addition to that recording. So just know that you've got the ability to download the highlights. And listen, if this wasn't enough time to grab it, I'll have Chris pop up that QR code one more time right before we start. Now, speaking of starting, please help me welcome nationally recognized real estate sales expert, Chris Leader. Chris, it is always so good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Chris. It's good to see you too. Very good. Your weekend was well, I'm assuming?
Oh my gosh, it was a great weekend. Weather is gorgeous. It wasn't too hot, which is saying something for Southeast Florida.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, hey, listen, we got a lot to cover today. And I wanted to just, not that anybody's forgot, we're 5 days out from August 17th. And I know the longer we've been in the business, the harder it is to make changes. So I think some ways new people are going to have this change is going to be easier for them. But, you know, I was also reading a news report out of Phoenix this morning. Channel 3 News out of Phoenix says that, and I've not heard this before, but open houses, before a person can go into an open house, Channel News 3 said in Phoenix that you're going to have to sign a non-agency agreement or a buyer's representative agreement. Now, this is the first time I've heard about a non-agency agreement. So I don't know if people are making stuff up, if this is new, what's going on. So I'm not sure from that perspective. Now, I did read a good article yesterday. I think it was in REM, and it was from a team leader. And they were writing how they were preparing their team for the August 17th date. So let me give you some points that I took from this article. Number one was they are fine-tuning their buyer's value proposition in exchange for the commission dollars they want to charge. So they're just doing a better job on their buyer presentation. Think of it that way. They're upgrading their buyer's consultation to educate their prospects on all of the new tools and resources that will be available to help facilitate and close the transaction. Okay. They're doing extensive forms training. And the idea is you want somebody to sign a form, you better be able to explain it and understand it yourself. So I think there's some value in that. Number 5 on my list was they are providing training to ensure, and this is important, Chris, this one was important, They're providing training to ensure the team isn't steering. So I really think that it's important that we all look at how we are steering our or how the clients, where we're going to look at houses and what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Now, number 6, new communication protocols. Now, this was, they're suggesting detailed communication logs for each buyer client they're working with. So they're actually filing information to memo to make sure that they've covered all the bases so that there's no going back on the file and saying, you didn't tell me this. So they're actually creating memos. They're going to have like a little working notebook with their files. Okay. Now, number 7 was kind of comical, and I thought this was funny. Launching a method of communicating how the seller is going to compensate the buyer's agent. So, and this was funny. So number 1 was they're going to have potentially a secret code in the lockbox that says BA2, meaning that when you open the lockbox, it's not advertised anywhere, but there's a little piece of paper that says the seller's willing to pay the buyer's agent 2%. I don't know. I thought that was, that doesn't make sense to me. The second one on their list was, and some of these are funny. They're actually going to attempt to try to get the seller to mow their lawn with a 2 or 2.5% commission on the front lawn, so that you're going to be able to see it kind of embedded in the lawn, like crop circles. Number 3, they were going to put a sign rider on the sign that said BA2. Some people thought they should get a neon sign and flash it on and off, 2% in the window. I don't know. Another idea was when you're not allowed to tell the other agent what the commissions are. So the listing agent was going to wink once for 1%, twice for 2%. They were going to have the seller install a sign on the front lawn that was separate from theirs. And then, of course, they were going to come up with a secret handshake like the Masons. You know, they were going to be able to have the 2% shake or the 1% shake. Setting all of this aside, I want you to think about this. I mean, it was comical, but I want you to think about this. What we want to do is understand the spirit of the law. And what you don't want to do is look for loopholes on how to navigate around the spirit. The idea is they're setting these rules up for a certain reason. Figure out the spirit and make sure whatever you do is within the boundaries or the perimeters of why the government is doing what they're doing. I think that take some time and understand the law and the changes, and then there's enough information. And most of all, go to your managing broker and get all the details on how you're going to move forward. But I promise you, on the other side of this, it's going to make for better buyer's agents. Buyer's agents are going to be better informed. They're not going to be transactional. They're going to be relationship based. They're going to have to communicate products and services. There will be value associated with the buyer's side of the transaction. Now, if you've been reading Inman, there's some guy been reporting in Inman that he's predicting that the buyer's commissions are going down. Now, I read another article today that said, not in Inman, but I believe it was the CNN article, they thought that commissions were going to go up because of this. So, you know, we're all over the place. Another
Chris,
little thing.
Hey, Chris, let's maybe tackle a few of these, because they're really, I think what it's doing, and I'm going to try and speak quietly because I'm still seeing things, Brandon, that Chris is hard to hear. But if I talk too loud, it's going to pop your speaker if you're turned it up for Chris. So we'll do our very best here. But listen, Chris, let's hit a few of those things. I think you said something really important. That is, let's just make sure we're honoring the spirit of the rules, right? The rule changes. And folks, keep in mind, next week, we're dedicating the entire session next week to this exact topic. We're going to spend the whole time talking about how to have conversations with your buyers about addressing your fee and getting them to sign an agreement. So we'll spend good time on that. But remember, there are just 2 things that are changing coming up, just 2. One is you just need to have a written agreement with every buyer before you go out and show property. And that agreement has to talk about your compensation, number 1. Number 2, we can't use the MLS to be able to advertise what the co-op is going to be. But there is nothing that says that sellers can't offer a co-op. In fact, they should offer a co-op. That's kind of how it's been done. They just can't advertise it in the MLS. Doesn't have to be secret. Doesn't have to be strange or awkward. Like, pick up the phone, call the listing agent, and ask them what the seller's offering, right? Simple as that. So I want to make sure we keep this as straightforward and as focused on reality as we can, because Chris did a great job. I love that, Chris. You're highlighting what a lot of, I think, the media and the conversations are. They're finding the absurd, the falsity around it. Just stay clear. And folks, do me a favor. Talk to your managing broker, your employing broker. You've all got protocols. You all know how you're going to be sharing what you're going to be offering in compensation if you're a listing agent. You all have protocols on how you're going to discover if there's funds available for you to be able to offset the responsibility of the buyer. And next week, we're going to have a great conversation. But Chris, keep going, because you were talking about something really important. I just wanted to take that moment and kind of double down on where you were before, but don't lose track of where you were.
So what I was going to say, Chris, is that there's another thing out there in the news that I think that we should probably at least have on our radar in real estate. And I know this one right now, the buyer's side of the transaction is taking up all the oxygen in the room. But there's legislation in front of the House again, and they're looking at our independent contractor status versus employee. Now, you've said this comes up pretty regularly in the House. Yeah, we were talking about this. But the National Association of Realtors, normally when you get independent contractor status, and forget about real estate, just in general, there's 20 questions that you have to kind of answer correctly, or you have to kind of be in alignment with in terms of what the responses are. Now, NAR negotiated it down to 3 a long time ago, but the Justice Department's going back in the IRS, and they're looking at it again to see, are they going to try to make us employees instead of independent contractors? Now, Chris, you had some insight. You said that this is something that comes up relatively every few years. Is that right?
Yeah, it does. Obviously, folks, listen, the fact that you are explicitly excluded from the Internal Revenue Code to be an independent contractor is something that we have all held near and dear to our hearts for years. It gives us all kinds of advantages. And yes, every year Congress looks at it and goes, hey, if we made real estate agents employees, we could make a lot more tax money. Well, yeah, you could, but I don't think it's going to happen. If you need to reference this, folks, it is IRC, Internal Revenue Code 3508, and it explicitly accepts you from being an employee. Be aware of it. It's the same kind of thing, Chris. You were mentioning about the status of a real estate agent. They also bring up every year, will home mortgage interest be deductible? And so far, we protected that very, very well. That will continue into the future, but be aware of that. Chris, I also saw a couple of comments about this rule change happening on the 17th. A couple of comments saying, is that for Canada and for the US, or just US? Obviously, want to make sure we're super clear. It's just for the US for now, but next week's session is all about getting exclusive agreements with buyers. And I don't care if you're Canadian, Australian, or from Mexico. This is a great thing for all of us to be really, really good at, and a requirement in the US. And Chris, it sounds like your volume is up mighty nice and loud now. So that's good news. Technology is working.
All right, so what I was going to say, Chris, is, and before I launch into today's material, I do believe that signing a BRA is just a great way to anchor your relationship. But we were talking on the weekend about this, and I said to you, I learned a long time ago in sales that it's not unusual for somebody you've been out and showed houses to for a couple of weekends, if you don't stay connected and keep basically joined at the hip, that they go off and buy a house from somebody else. And anybody in real estate's had that experience. So long before we had BRAs, I got to the point where I was getting frustrated. So when I would meet a buyer, I'd say, let's go to the office. I want to get an idea of what you want to accomplish. I want to get a look at what area you're most interested in. But the long and short of it, at the end of my buyer consultation meeting, what I used to say to them was, I only get paid if you buy the house through me. So I want to make it clear I'm going to invest a lot of time. And I just want to ask, going through this process, will you agree to buy the house for me? And they said yes. Then I would reach across the table and I would shake hands with them. And basically what I was looking for was a way to anchor my relationship so that they would feel some responsibility to me and not wander off and buy something from someone else. So I like the fact that, and we're going to talk about all the soft skills, but I also think that it's important to finalize it with that BRA, outline what you're getting compensated for, and lay out what the services are. So I think it's all great. But let's launch into today's material because I think we got some great stuff for everybody today.
Thank you, Chris. Looking forward to hearing more.
Here we are here. I want to talk to you about dormant leads and resurrecting them. I think this is really important, especially this time of year. And with all the changes that are going on in our industry, it gives us a reason to reach out and connect with people. And I was taught this, Chris, probably in my second or third year in real estate. You know, I would hit these points in my business when my business just slowed down. And some of the experienced agents would say, go back and get the old leads from January and February and talk to them. Because even if somebody was interested in then and they postponed and put it off for later, we lose sight of it, we forget, we move forward. So this is a great opportunity to go back, connect with those people, and pull them forward. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. Now, why do leads often go dormant? It's speed to lead. A lot of times we get a lead, but we're so busy with whatever we're working on, we don't get to the lead quickly enough, and sometimes the lead ends up going somewhere else. What we've learned over years and years of collecting data, that when a lead comes in, you basically have 5 minutes to respond. Anytime, any longer, and there's a good chance the lead goes to somebody else. Now, when you are talking to somebody and they've made an inquiry, and maybe it starts out digitally and converts to voice, but you are talking to them, having local market intel adds so much depth to the conversation and so much value. So it's not just about the property, it's about the neighborhood, what other homes are selling for, how long they've been on the market, what type of flexibility, is the market rising in inventory, how are prices, have they stabilized, what's happening in the mortgage market, who were the builders in that particular neighborhood. What I'm really saying to you is if you know what you're talking about, people are drawn to you and they want to spend time with you and they feel confident and they feel secure that they can move forward with you because you are a vast amount of local knowledge and you have the information about what they want. So yeah, that connection is going to be really strong. Now, we engage the lead on what they want to buy, not what they have to sell. What's interesting is NAR has said, based on statistical data, that half the people that call us about buying a house have a house to sell. So, you know, part of buying the next property is selling the one they have. So you want to have somewhere in the conversation, you want to say to them, by the way, have you guys sold your house yet? And they say, oh, no, we haven't. And you say, well, you have it on the market, right? And they say, no, we don't. Say, oh, well, you know what? What we should do is I'll get you some information on the neighborhood you're talking about. I'll tell you a little bit about what's going on over there. But at the same time, you probably should get an evaluation on your home to help you understand how much equity you'll be porting to the next property and what it looks like from a costing perspective overall. You know, part of the service isn't just that I help you find a house, but I also help you successfully sell the property you have at the highest possible price, least amount of inconvenience. Let's do this. Normally, I would book a buyer's appointment in my office to get the process started, but why don't we have that appointment at your house? We'll take some time and we'll uncover what it is you're looking for in a property. And while I'm there, I'll have an opportunity to walk through the house, see it firsthand, understand where you are now, understand where you want to go, and that will help me assemble all of the numbers you're going to need to make the right decisions and choices. So we're going to flip that buyer lead into a seller appointment. Now, here's a little sidebar, and it was not in my notes. You get the house listed, perfect. But what I need you to do is before you leave the seller listing appointment, assuming they're buying from you and they've said yes, we need them to sign the BRA on the purchase side. Nothing would be more painful or frustrating than a seller who has signed a listing with you and find out later they went out and bought a home from somebody else. That would be a horrible experience. So let's get our BRA when we get that listing. Now, disseminating information. One of the techniques you'll hear me talk about is the tip of the iceberg technique. And really what this does is it creates curiosity. You know, someone's called you on a property. They're excited. They want information. Maybe they even want to go tour it. But here's what we need to understand is most of the time they never buy the house they call in on. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't show it to them. But what you want to let them know is the property that they're inquiring about is one of many in the area that's for sale. And often the really good ones are sold before they even get a for sale sign on it. Have you ever seen a property with a sold sign, never saw a for sale sign, and thought you might be interested in that? We often refer to that in the industry as the tip of the iceberg. Sometimes the good ones are gone before they even get into the marketplace. what I'd like to do is gather up some information about what it is you're looking for. We'll go out and look at a few properties so I get a sense of what you like, more importantly, what you don't like. But I'll be on it every day looking for every new piece of property that comes up that checks your boxes. And I want you to be one of the first people that are aware of the property, and I'm going to be looking for you all the time. So what I want you guys to do is plant the seed when you're talking to a prospect that just the stuff they see isn't the whole picture. There's always more stuff out there or stuff coming. And because of your relationship with other professionals in the area, because you know the neighborhood, and you also know that there are people who are maybe flirting with the idea of selling, but they haven't put their home on the market, this would be a perfect opportunity for you to reach out, talk to them, and see if they would be interested in selling their home, because you do have a prospect right now that likes that area. It's called the tip of the iceberg. It's based on curiosity, and you've got to let people know that what they see isn't the entire picture in terms of inventory. Now, why do leads go dormant? The first thing I would say to that is it happens when you first meet buyers. When the buyer inquiry comes in, most agents book a showing to see the opportunity, see the property, rather than booking a buyer's consultation appointment. So what ends up happening is you go over, and now today we're going to have to get BRAs signed, or one property BRAs signed, but we're going to have to get something signed. But what we used to do is run over and show them the home, maybe build some rapport when we're there and find out a little bit about them. Well, you know that's not going to actually work this way now with our BRAs on August 17th. So this is a really good chance for you to follow the right process. Hey, I'd love to show you that property, and I will get us an appointment for that. There's a couple of others in that area that if we're over there looking, you should probably have a look at as comparisons. But you know, the whole process starts with you first coming into the office. I'm going to have to take you through a series of questions, or I want to take you through some questions to find out what it is you're looking for. I want to figure out your wants and needs list. We should discuss different neighborhoods and where the best value exists. We'll book an appointment, go out and look at some. There's actually some paperwork that we have to go through today before we start this process. Now, I like getting them into the office, guys. It gives you a chance to get to know them, talk to them, build a little rapport, find out what it is they're looking for, explore neighborhoods. And this is an opportunity for you to really showcase your local expertise and make that connection. This is not a transaction. It's a relationship. And our business is going to change in this category. There's more inventory. So the buyers are going to take longer to make a decision. You're going to have to nurture the relationships longer, and you got to build a relationship to get them to make a commitment to your contract in terms of your BRA. So there's a lot of selling skills that are going to be required now. The good news is the consumer is going to have a better experience, and you're going to have to focus on being a local expert to bring value to that relationship. Now, qualifying the buyers up front. I love the idea, and I learned to do this a long time ago. You guys have gotten away from this in recent years. But I used to say to my buyers, listen, when you come in, I need a letter of employment, most recent pay stub. I need last year's tax returns. And I knew I had a qualified buyer when they walked in for my very first buyer's appointment at the office, and they brought in all their information. That told me this person was really serious about buying a house. I mean, it's a little inconvenient. Yeah. But doesn't it make all the sense in the world, before you go out and sign a BRA and go look at houses, you should find out if they're actually qualified to buy a house financially? How many times and we've all made this mistake if you've been in the business long enough, you have a sense, your instinct says, oh, this person's fine. We show them houses, we write an offer, we negotiate the deal, and then we go to get the financing, and only to find out that they have really bad credit, or they couldn't finance, or the story wasn't as they told it to us. So the reason I say this is I think you want to take time at this moment to gather up that information. And in my very first appointment today, I would invite my mortgage professional in to sit down, gather up some of that data, and get the file started. It's going to help you when you go out to negotiate your deal. It's going to give your buyers more confidence in the quality of your work because you have other professionals that are part of this environment. It just elevates the whole experience, and they're going to go, wow, these people really know what they're doing. So I think it's really important that you do that. The first meeting, I want you to approach the conversation optimistically. I want you to be excited and enthusiastic. Buying a home should be fun. People should have a good time. It should be like they're shopping for this major thing. I love selling houses. I mean, I know logically, and I teach everybody to be a listing agent on the seller's side, but there's nothing I'd rather have done when I was an agent on a Saturday was to go out with qualified prospects that I really liked and go out and look at houses. To me, it was a treasure hunt. It was finding that gem that they were looking for. And every time one of my buyers bought the house, I was excited as they were. It was like every time they bought a house, I bought a house. To be honest with you, working with my buyers, and I know that I'm supposed to work with sellers, was my drug of choice. It was my addiction. I got an emotional high. I mean, you've seen somebody when they're buying a house, they're so excited, they're making their offer, they're like literally jumping up and down. I'd be jumping up and down with them. I was as excited as they were. It was like I was every house one of my clients bought, I bought. I bought it right along with them. I got this high out of it. So I want you guys to have fun with this. I want you to bring energy. Nobody wants to be around a sad real estate agent. So bring all that positive energy. Now, to communicate what you do, you can't just tell people. You got to show them. In real estate, a picture's worth $1,000. We never tell people things we can show them. So I need you to have a really great digital presentation. It's got to be clear for them to understand the value that you're bringing to this relationship. Now, this is your last chance. You guys got to get this all organized because in another week, you're going to need to do this stuff. And I'd like to think that you got your presentation really polished, practiced, and rehearsed. Now, if there are a few of you out there that don't have a digital presentation that you're in love with, then I recommend, Chris, that you put Mel's number in the chat and they get a hold of us because our presentation is spectacular. And I'll tell you what makes our presentation different. Our presentation was written by a sales guy for a salesperson to get people to commit. This isn't a corporate presentation designed to sell the company. You're going to have to take your company tools and blend them into our presentation. This is where the customization elevates you to that different level. And it's going to allow you to stay on track. And I'll tell you what my presentations, both on the seller and the buyer side, are designed to do. To get a signature. It all comes down, it almost, and it doesn't, but almost the last slide in the presentation says, hand, client, pen. That's how straightforward this is. It's about getting that signature. Now, if you want people to buy houses, you've got to focus on their future plans. Selling their house means getting what they want. And what you want to do is, people aren't excited about selling their house. People are excited about buying a house. So I know you've got to be focused on getting the seller listing ready. But at the same time, if you want them to let go of where they are, you got to constantly connect them to where they want to go. You got to keep reminding them about whatever it is that's exciting and interesting and why they're doing this. And at the end of the day, you've got to finish your sentences with tie downs. You've got to always be closing. So as a sales professional, I'd like to think you know what a tie down question is. Makes sense. Am I reading you right? There's a tie down for you. That works for you, doesn't it? You got to like that one, I'm sure. These are all designed to get people to say yes. The more yeses you get as you make your way through the presentation, the easier it is to close for the signature at the end. You got to always be closing. Let me make it real clear for you. We're in a performance-based business. You're like a professional athlete. So how do we keep score in real estate? Signatures. The question I have for you is, did you get a signature this week? And if you didn't do your job. You got to get siggies. No siggies, no paychecks. All right. So you're going to have people say to you they want to postpone. This is normal when it comes to making a big decision. They get excited and then they back up. They get excited and they back up. You got to have an answer for when they say I want to think it over, or we like to think about it, or we don't want to rush into this. We want to sleep on it or talk about it in private. You got to figure out what it is they're struggling with. Is it the mortgage rates? Is it the purchase price? Is it the neighborhood? Is it the floor plan? Did they expect they were going to get more value or a bigger house for their money? I don't know what it is, but you need to uncover it. You can't let them wander away. A sales professional doesn't let them up. They stay at the table, they work it out, they peel the onion, they figure out what the problem is, then they offer some solutions. Now, one of the things that always has to be built into your sales talk tracks, and it always lives below the surface, and that is the fear of loss. Some of you may have utilized a version of this in the pandemic market when we use the term FOMO, the fear of missing out. It's basically the same concept. If you want somebody to buy something, you point out the benefits. If you want them to buy it today, you have to create urgency. So what is the urgency message right now? You might want to say the selection is better out there. You should be looking now while the selection is good as it is. What about selling ours? Well, I think that right now prices are still holding pretty firm and the inventory levels rising. This gives you a chance to maximize the sale price and have the selection you're looking for. Listen, I'm just making this up off the top of my head. I'm not saying that this is the talk track that you guys are going to use, but you got to understand how to move people forward. You got to give them a reason to act now. So think about it. And remember, a master sales professional says less, listens more, and is more thoughtful. The greatest salespeople talk less and listen carefully to what their clients say. Number 3 on my list is you didn't give them a persuasive reason to act now. And you got it. And the other thing I want you to know is people get emotionally connected to something, and then they get nervous. You got to help them with the nervousness and recommit all of the benefits to whatever it was they were looking at that they were so excited about. You didn't handle their objections properly when it came up. We want to wait for interest rates to go down, or we want to wait for house prices to go down, or house prices to go up, or whatever their issue is, we want to find out about fixing ours up before we put it on the market. You got to have your dialogues and talk tracks down. This market you're in now is not automatic. It takes a sales professional, and it is not a speed-based market. It is a skills-based market. So you're going to need to study how to be a great salesperson. I love this because this is my sweet spot. I love sales. I've done it all my life, and this is exactly the spot we're in right now. You need to continue to refine your selling skills to convert more prospects. So, and there may very well be less prospects around, so you're going to have to get better at your conversions. You need to manage their expectations from the start so that they don't get disappointed with you. Sometimes in sales, people build things up to get people excited only to let them down later when they can't deliver on the expectations or the story or the picture they painted. What I need you to do is be realistic with people so that their expectations are not out of alignment. When inventory levels are low, in most markets they're not, but when they are low, buyers look at the list price as the starting line, not the finish line. Now, increasing inventory, you want to consider the list price today, and you need to compare it to other comps in the neighborhood. Some of you have got some bias based on the history that being in the market, and you remember when there was no inventory and how people had to react. That's not the case in many of our markets now. Inventory levels are rising. So where the buyer had to be really flexible before, the seller is going to have to compromise now. And you need to know the market well enough to know when somebody's overpriced based on last year's numbers versus on the number they should be. This is the value you bring to the buyer relationship. And even though mortgage rates are going down, I'd still get a rate lock. The one thing I've learned about the mortgage market, you just can't make it. There's no way to forecast what's going to happen in that marketplace. So get with your mortgage professional, get the rate lock, and you know that when you lock the rate, should they go down, the mortgage lender will offer you a reduction in rates at the time to the market where you are. So you get the benefit just in case, because everything looks like we're headed down, interest rates are down, the market's going to pick up, we're going to have a good finish to the year. But at the same time, there are so many external factors globally that can affect the outcome and affect the markets and the stock market and the mortgage market and the central banking system. So get that rate lock. Number 3 on my list is when you see a house they like, you should still move quickly on it so you don't miss out. People like to hesitate with that big decision. You as a sales professional have to give them that gentle nudge forward to get them to make that commitment. And when inventories is increasing, sellers should be sure to price right, and they need to compromise. So they need to be flexible on closing. Maybe there's some chattels that might be included now in the purchase price, or the seller will, if the inventory levels rise, the seller may entertain some sort of compensation to the buyer's agent now, or seller assist on closing, whatever that looks like, because as inventory levels rise, sellers have to come up with strategies to make their property stand out from everybody else's. Good listing agents will highlight this. Good buyer's agents will be aware of this and bring those opportunities to their clients. Now, managing seller expectations. I still believe we want to price just slightly below market value. And I'll tell you why. There's a good chance in some markets now, we may start to see prices start to come down. And wouldn't it be great to have started right in the first place? And that way you may not have to start or have to revisit the conversation as quickly about price reductions. And if it is priced well, it still could get multiple offers. Could. Now, listings priced right may still sit on the market. Now, one of the things, and I'm not sure if it comes up in one of my bullet points, but I want to mention this to you. We've adopted in the past, in an undersupplied market, aggressive pricing strategies designed to attract lots of people to the property with the intent to bid the purchase price up. But don't be surprised if you take a house that's and then somebody's gone and listed it way below market value, and in this market you still don't get any offers. So what I'm hearing from some agents is the house comes in priced under market for about 10 days. They don't get any offers, and what do? They bring the house price back up again. And this is a sign that that previous strategy isn't working as effectively. So if you underprice the house significantly, you still may get offers less than the asking price. That's why I go back to number one on my slide here and say just slightly below market value is where we need to be. Can't afford to be above because there's too many properties for sale, and you don't want to be too far down because the offers you're probably going to attract anyways are going to be less than the asking price. So think about it. But most of all, let me say this, you better know how to do your CMAs properly, and you better do your homework. So why do they go dormant? You need to reduce the frustration during the process so they enjoy working with you. Let me say this, buying a home should be fun. Like I said to you, for me, it was always a treasure hunt. I really looked forward to it. I did my homework, my research, and I was excited to see the properties and explore them with my buyers. I hope you'll have that same emotional feeling because people get caught up in that energy. Now, refine the home buying search. It starts with getting their wants and needs list. And you really can't do that at a property when you're showing a home. That's why you got to go to the buyer consultation appointment. You sit down and you say, hey, listen, there's lots of stuff for us to look at, but what I want to do is narrow the search so that I'm not wasting your time. So let's take a few minutes. I want to ask you some questions. I want to find out what you have to have in a house, what you must absolutely have. And then I want to find out what you'd like to have in the house. And I want to create that list. And then we're going to go to the MLS computer. We'll have a look at different neighborhoods. We'll have a discussion about what neighborhood works the best for you. Then we're going to zero in on the properties that are for sale that fit inside the price range and have the needs and most of the wants. Now, often we won't know what that experience is like until we visited the house. So I'm going to put some homes on tour today. We're going to go together. I want you to share with me all the things you liked about the property, the things you didn't like. So it helps me refine the process and it gets us to what you want even quicker. And I don't miss the right house. Sound good to you? See, there's my tie down. So this is part of that process. If they have inquired about a specific property, we want to show it to them as quickly as possible, probably the same day right after our initial meeting. I like to get to things as quickly as possible. Don't kick that out too far, because if you do, somebody else is going to capitalize on the opportunity, or life is going to get in the way. Somebody's going to talk them out of buying right now or selling right now. So what I want you to do is get together with them as quickly as possible. But keep in mind, the house that they've called on, 99% of the time, isn't going to be the right house for them. But it starts the conversation. It's an opportunity as a launching pad for you to share with them how much more you know about the local real estate market. It's the beginning of your relationship. It's the connection, and that's how this all starts. So you got to know that the first one is probably not going to be, in fact, it would be rare on the first day for you to sell them a house, given inventory levels and what's going on in the market. You want to build on their excitement, and you want to book the entire day of showings up if you can. So when I say the entire day, I've always found that maybe 5 houses tops. 5's probably too much for most people because often the details get lost. Now, before you head out to show houses, you've got to have that buyer agreement signed. You got to sign the BRA so that you understand how much you're working for and keep the momentum going, and they feel that they've entered into a committed relationship. Prospects and you will get frustrated if the house hunting takes too long. Now, some of you have never worked in a market where there's lots of inventory. Some of you are so used to running to the deal or running to the listing to get ahead of everybody else. But the market we're going into, there may be a significant selection. And it's not unusual, based on some of the research we did, for a person to take 2.5 months to buy a house and maybe look at 9, 12 properties. They might go out on 2 or 3 Saturdays with you. Some of you are like, what? I've never worked in anything like that. I've worked in markets where there was so much inventory, we couldn't go out and look at houses right off the bat. We had to sit down and narrow this thing down because there was just too many homes. So I know some of you are like, that's not the market we're in, but the market levels are rising. And I can tell you the condo market where I'm in right now, it's a mess. There's way too many condos for sale. They've overbuilt the marketplace. So that's just one local example. The next thing I was going to say to you, you want to compare every house you see with their wants and needs list. You want to ask them what they did like, what they didn't like. Here's the thing I'm going to ask you. Even when somebody gives you the impression they didn't like it, you need to ask them every house you go in, would you buy this house? Because sometimes you may be misreading what they're saying. And if they say no, I say, okay, listen, before we leave, I got to ask the question one more time, but I got to ask it a different way. Would you buy this house at any price? And if they say absolutely not, I say, let's go. If they say, well, at any price, I might consider it. I'd say, okay, well, let this put on the maybe list because maybe we have to circle back and have a second look at this. So you want to put it on the maybe list as a possibility. Now, what if they're not ready and you need to nurture the lead? You've made the contact, they've showed some initial interest, but they're not moving forward on this thing. What are we going to do with it? Well, a small percentage of potential leads will be ready to make an immediate decision, leaving upwards to 90% of the people you talk to who have demonstrated some kind of interest still sitting on the table. That's why I want you guys to go back and resurrect some of the leads from January and February and March. Maybe the rates were too high. Maybe inventory was too low. Maybe something happened in their life. But you need to go back and find these people and you need to say, hey, so today I want to give you 3 strategies to nurture leads to increase your conversions. Number 1, enter every lead in your CRM system and start a campaign with them. And you want to use different campaigns for different leads, buyers versus sellers versus investors, but you got to start the drip campaign because when you're too busy to stay in touch, what you may not realize is your digital campaign is, and when you make that call 4 months later, it's not going to feel as cold to them as it is to you. Number 2 on the list, mix it up. You can't just send emails. So we got to have a combination of emails going out in your CRM system, your text messages, social media, pick up the phone and give them a call, send them a video, market reports, handwritten notes. All of this is designed to create variety. And when we bring variety to this, we stay top of mind. Pre-design your campaign so it's not as much work. We don't want to customize a campaign. We want to pre-design. Now, even the author of the conversion code says this, and this is the guy that talks about all the online leads. Chris Smith says, if you want to do business, pick up the phone and talk to people. So what I'm going to say, at a certain point, you got to move them from text and you got to move them to an actual phone call if you're going to build a relationship. So how do you get back in touch with people? Well, when we look at our buyer leads that went cold, remember half of those buyers have a home to sell. So I need you to connect with that. Talk to them about an evaluation. Number 2, I want you to go back through your old open house registries and talk to everybody. Hey, just seeing if you guys ended up buying or not, and can we talk? Sellers who decided to wait, online leads from the past 3 months that didn't convert, I want you to get back in touch with everybody. And some of you are going to say, it's uncomfortable. I don't like calling all those people who are reaching out. I'm going to say, welcome to the world of sales. The primary activity you can do every day is find somebody that wants to sell a house. Now, what if they're on the do not call list? You can't call anyone who hasn't given you their written consent to receive calls, even if they're on the do not call list. So check with your state regulations to make sure that you're following all the restrictions. If you do call people, you have to call them between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. And this covers both US and Canada. If someone makes an inquiry online, for instance, you can contact them up to 3 months in the US and 6 months in Canada. And even if they're on the do not call list, they made an inquiry, you're allowed to get in touch with them for the first 3 months. If a person has done a transaction with you, you have to stay in touch with them within the 18 months of them doing doing the deal. Because if you try to get in touch with them 24 or 36 months later and you haven't talked to them, believe it or not, you're in violation of the do not call list. What I want you to do is make sure you check all of the stuff on the do not call list. Ask everyone you contact if you can have their express consent to stay in touch. And contact them via text, phone mail, or even from your website. Provide a way to opt out. So if people don't want to hear from you, you're being legitimate, you're doing it the right way. But let's give them a reason to stay connected. So what should you say? You want to reintroduce yourself, let them know where you're from. It's been a while. How are they doing? What's going on? Back on the date, you were considering buying or selling, but we lost touch. I wanted to find out if you've made a move. Have you sold your house? Have you bought anything? And if not, could I be of assistance or service? Don't make this more complicated than it is. Just get in touch with people and talk to them. If the answer is yes, say congratulations. And ask them if they'd like a market report from you and get express consent to stay in touch. And by the way, do they know of anybody else that's thinking of buying or selling? And they may very well turn over a friend or a neighbor to you, and away we go. If the answer is no, remind them what originally motivated them to consider making the move: a bigger house, better location, whatever copious notes you took at the time. And if they could get that, and would they still be interested? So you got to reconnect them back to that idea. I promise you, the idea is there. It's just smoldering. It's not on fire. And if you reconnect to that idea, they may still say no to you this time. Stay in touch with them, because you replanted that seed. You may find very shortly that they have reconsidered. And if it's a maybe, ask the questions to explore the opportunities. Make sure that you always create curiosity and let them know that part of the market is what you see, but there are parts of the market that they don't, and they're often sold before they even get to the marketplace. Even if prices do go up, and people are going to say they want to wait until prices go up before they sell. Even if prices do go up, they're gambling if they wait. Often they get more for their house, but the home they're buying is going to cost more. It's an apples to apples purchase. It's really, you know what, if you're motivated, let's go now and look at properties. If they think that their houses are too expensive right now, I would always say to them, yes, there's a good chance they might go down a little bit. But the question is, are you going to sell your house in the next 24 months if you bought a new property? And the answer would be no. So if you think houses are expensive today, wait till you see what they're going to be in 5 or 10 years. Now, Chris, I went through a ton of material today, so they really need to go back and watch this. Here's this week's assignment. I want you to look at your to-do list, and I want you to review your calendar from the last quarter, or go right back to the beginning of the year. And I want you to make every list of every lead that went cold, and I want you to get in touch with them. This is a perfect summer project to help position you for the fall market with new inventory and new buyers that are excited. So while everybody else is caught in the dog days of summer and they haven't seen past Labor Day, I expect you guys to get the lead out and get after this. So Chris, the QR code. So the QR code, and that will get them, that will give them the slides that they were missing from today. Now, if you like today's session, please give us a poll and let us know, give us the 5 stars, because we're trying to expand our footprint and deliver a better experience for everybody. And to get the details for our Leaders Edge coaching, if you're interested on one-on-one, and by the way, you should reach out and talk to us about LEC, because I've got stories of people that we have coached. Like, for instance, we have a young lady on the east coast of Florida. She's now #1, I think, on the whole eastern seaboard for the state of Florida. And we've coached her for about 3 years. I'm thinking, Chris, and I could be wrong, she's like 26, 27 years of age, and she is just burning it up. So if you all want to figure out how to take, how'd you like to be #1 in Southeast Florida? I mean, that's Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton. I mean, that's like big. So you better reach out. If you're not reaching out, that's on you, because we got this thing nailed. Hey, Chris, we got some Q&A, and I know I went really long today, but I had so much material. So why don't you jump in with some of the questions for me?
Oh, listen, Chris, every bit of that material was fantastic. And yes, that QR code, if you miss the QR code, you can simply just jump into the chat section, and I put the link there to it. You can grab that. Make sure you get those next steps. Super helpful coming down the line. Also, before I go into the Q&A here today, quick reminder that next week we're going to be talking about the entire kind of buyer conversation, if you will, how to make sure that you showcase your value proposition and ways to be able to do that. We're also going to be talking about how to talk about your fee. Don't want to miss that. And then also, lastly, how to make sure you get the actual agreement signed. So 3 really good topics. We're also looking to have a top agent join us for the beginning of that to get some insight on how they're handling this as well. So whether if you're from the US or Canada, this is a great must-catch session next week. We look forward to seeing you at that. Now, we got a lot of questions. Let's just dive in. Chris, great content today. By the way, if you have any problem at all accessing your recording, do not be shy. I put in the link also, that link you can get instructions on how to reactivate your account. If your payment method did fall out, don't fret. Call Melanie, call me, call Chris, call us, and we'll make sure that you get access to the recording for this week because it's a great recording. Okay, Chris, hey, listen, a couple things that came up. First and foremost, David, you had a quick comment. You said, how do I improve my sales skills? Love that candid, transparent nature. We can all stand to improve our sales skills. I put in a link here where you can get some more information. Listen, my recommendation certainly is if you can afford to get into one-on-one coaching, there's nothing like it. Nothing like being able to generate the kind of business and, quite frankly, create balance in your life and manage your time better. But if you can't, we also have an incredible virtual training library, jam-packed full of hours of sales skills, more modest price. So check that out as well. And then obviously attend all the training courses that your company offers around sales. Selling skills.
Hey, Chris,
Selling is
can
an
I add
art.
a little something to that for David?
Yeah,
David,
please, Chris. You're the
get
master.
a hold of your manager and your regional RVP. Maybe you guys need to book me to come down and do some live training. I'd love to
Yeah,
do
why
that.
not?
So why not?
Absolutely, you're great at that. Um, Quick comment, Laura. Laura, this is I get it, Laura. I totally agree. She says I'm not a cynical person, yet I'm curious about why the DOJ isn't going after the attorneys and doctors to reduce their fees. Maybe it's because 60% of real estate agents are women. Oh, I would hate to think that would have anything to do with this at all. But lately, I'm experiencing people thinking because I might be kind of weak, I might be willing to take something less, but I always take the high road. I'm deeply proud of what I do and how I do it. But I think the DOJ should be going after somebody else. Well, listen, I agree too. Laura, you've got hi, Laura from Colorado. Nice to hear from you. Hey, Chris, as a listing agent, how should we handle buyers and neighborhood tours of our listings and our open houses? So, Chris, I think she's referring to kind of moving forward after the 17th as a listing agent. How do we handle buyers and neighbors touring our listings at open houses?
So again, Chris, I heard about this document that you're going to need to sign for an open house. I was the first I heard about this morning. So I'm going to, and I'm going to do as we peel this onion, I'm learning along like you guys are. I'm going to say start out with your manager, get some direction there, because at the end of the day, the manager is where the liability and the responsibility rests. But let's find out if there is something for open houses. But I do think that this is going to help us say to somebody, it's going to support us in saying to somebody, buying a home is a big decision. I think it's incumbent upon you to spend some time with a professional. I would love to share with you all of the strategies that we're using successfully for our clients. At the end of that experience, though, you're going to need to make a decision about who and how you want to be represented. And it doesn't matter if it's me or someone else. At the end of whatever that conversation looks like, you're going to have to figure out what that relationship is going to be. But before you make that decision, I would like the opportunity to sit with you to show you why our clients are so happy and the type of service they're experiencing. So with your permission, I have time on Thursday afternoon, or would you guys prefer Saturday morning? Alternate choice close, book the appointment. But I don't know if I answered that question properly, Chris, or if I stick handled around it. So I don't know.
No, I think you handled the bigger question, right? But I think, Maura, when it comes to your specific question about a neighbor walks into the open house, right? Someone they just walk in unannounced. Again, what Chris said is right. Talk to your managing broker first. Talk to Tammy in your market. Make sure you got clarity around how to handle this. But listen, I just smile. This makes me so happy because what this does is it gives us the opportunity to be able to have better conversations with everyone. So imagine this. You've got a stack of buyer agreements sitting on a counter when people walk in, where you can simply write their name on the top of it. And in that buyer agreement, it has the address of the specific house they're walking into. And it has a timeline. This is a 1 hour agreement. It is a 2 hour, forget 6 months, 2 hour agreement. You may never see these people again. You probably won't. But here's what it does. they will sign this. And oh, by the way, it says if it's your listing, your seller is paying a co-op, so you can put in that provision that in this one particular case, the seller is willing to pay a fee if they are or aren't. Have them sign it. But here's what happens, folks: they walk out the door with an agreement. It may only be good for an hour, but it goes back to their house. And most importantly, that agreement has your name, your phone number, your email address, and you've positioned yourself as a professional that is willing to have a real conversation with a consumer. And by and large, you meet enough people, those people are going to be deeply impressed with your professionalism, with your commitment to doing this right, but doing it in a way that's comfortable, that creates a stair-step process to a relationship. So don't be afraid of this, you guys. This is a huge opportunity. Okay, Chris, next one coming up here. Oh, thank you, Laura. Laura says, I've used Chris Leder's digital buyer and seller presentation since I started real estate 7 years ago. They're clear, they're comprehensive, they're professional. I win 90% of the time. Whoa! Probably owe you a commission, Laura. Thank you for your great comment. Okay. Let's see. We've got Bonnie. The consumers do not need to sign the documents. Anyone can come in and browse during an open house as before. The document is disclosing to the consumers. Okay, this is great, Bonnie. What you've outlined right here is each market's different. Talk to your broker. Do whatever is appropriate in your local market. Thank you for that great comment. Chris, we're going to at least maybe get like one or two real questions in here today versus comments, but we love the comments. How do I get a buyer to meet with me, Chris? So that's a question that Veronica asks. How do I get a buyer to agree to meet with me? So this is probably more of they're calling in or they're reaching in.
It goes back, Veronica, to that tip of the iceberg. I'm going to, and let's pretend I was talking to somebody on the phone. So I'd say, hey, I appreciate the inquiry. What can I tell you about the property? Well, can you tell me about this, this, and this? So I tell them a little bit. And at the end, and what I say to them is, well, this one's got 4 bedrooms. Were you looking for the 4-bedroom model? Oh, so you would have actually preferred something a little smaller, the 3. Okay, well, let's not discount this one. Let me tell you a little bit more about it. So then they ask, is the backyard fenced? They say, yes, this one's got a fenced backyard. Perfect. We have a dog. And we kind of go through this conversation. But then what happens is at a certain point, it's pretty apparent that this isn't going to be the right property. So what you need to say is, it sounds to me like you're pretty serious about finding the right house. Am I reading you right? Often there are properties that I bet you've driven past and saw a sold sign, never saw a for sale sign. And you wonder, geez, where did that one? It just went. We have what we call our A-listers. These are people in a committed relationship that have committed to us working with them. And when the very best properties come up, because we have their profile built out, we make sure that they're the first people to get a look at it. Often the best ones are gone before they even hit the market. So let me ask you again. You sound like you guys are serious. Am I reading you right? We are. I'm assuming you want to buy a great house at a great price. No, we want to buy a terrible house at a bad price. No, they always say yes and yes. So, well, let's do this. There's no obligation. Let's book an appointment. So I guess really what I'm saying is you have to create curiosity and you got to bring enough experience and value to the initial conversation that they would be wanting to meet with you. Listen, guys, take apart what I told you today, peel this thing back, and I move at 90 miles an hour. But I'm telling you, the gems are layered on this thing. You got to take this and slow it down and understand what I'm saying to you so that you understand how to convert these opportunities and get those signatures. So I hope that helped, Chris.
Chris, that's fantastic. Listen, folks, we've got a bunch of questions here. Most all of them relate to buyers. That's coming next week. Here's a sampling. Where should I meet a buyer if my office isn't easy for them? What should I do if a buyer doesn't want a presentation, just wants to see a house? How can I tell if a buyer's ready to sign an agreement? There are a bunch. We're going to start with those next week. So do not worry. In the meantime, if something is pressing, you can always reach out. Ask Chris at leadersedgetraining.com. He will get back to you personally. Remember, today's session will be uploaded by tomorrow at noon. It'll be there for an entire week until next Tuesday. So please take the time to watch the session again. It's full of great stuff. And listen, Chris, I think it's a wrap for today's session. Thank you for taking time out of your busy travel schedule. I know you're on the go all the time, talking to groups all over the country. We appreciate that. Also, a huge thank you. And We appreciate you for just joining us today, all of you. Chris outlined the one-on-one coaching program. If you're at a place in your career where it's time to kick off this career and really reach your full potential, you can simply go to leccoaching.com, leccoaching.com. Go to our website, go anywhere you want. You'll find us. We're easy to find. Great information there on how you can change the trajectory of your career. So, folks, until next week, where we're talking about the buyer side of the transaction, how to communicate with buyers in a way that is meaningful and impactful. Until then, until next week, stay focused, stay optimistic, and stay committed to ensure that your best years are, in fact, your next years. Thank you for joining us, Chris. Thank you. We'll see everybody next week.
I can see